Everybody, my name is Matt Poorman, and I'm the lead pastor here at Cornerstone. Ushers, Jeremy, can you escort this guy out of the service, please? That's my son. Hey, I'm glad that y'all are here this morning, and I'm actually going to take a seat. We're going to do, if you're new here this morning, we're going to have a little bit of, before I jump into the teaching, a little family business this morning, and so you can kind of tune out if you're new, but I needed to let you guys know and take a minute and inform you of a change that's coming as we head towards the end of 2022 and the beginning of 2023 here at Cornerstone. And that is the fact, and many of you know if you are a Cornerstone crew, you're serving somewhere at the church, you knew that this was potentially coming. But starting actually this month, we will be in the process of transitioning out of the Vineyard movement of churches into a new church network. I'll tell you about that in just a minute. What that means is that just plainly that we are no longer going to be a Vineyard church. Now, I know that might shock some of you. I'm just going to stick to my notes this morning because Leah says, don't overdo it, Matt, all right? I know that might become from a shock to some of you, but the board and I have actually been wrestling with this decision since last fall and really got really intent about having conversation about this starting in January. And I want to be upfront, in so many ways, we love the Vineyard movement of churches. We absolutely love them. We wouldn't be a church, by the way, without the Vineyard movement of churches. I would not have been trained as a leader without the Vineyard movement of churches. And so we love them. And so we honor that, right? It's an honoring thing for us. But we have realized that being a church that's about relationship, y'all know that we're about relationship. We care about relationship, is that we are not as connected relationally in the Vineyard movement as we would have liked to be or hoped to be, specifically in the area of pastoral care and support and resources that we desired in the Vineyard movement. That, along with the fact that we actually, and some of you don't know this, but we give 3% of our annual budget to the Vineyard movement of churches. And so with that, and not feeling like we're as connected as we'd want to be and getting trained and equipped and all those things, it made the board start questioning, are we to remain a Vineyard church? And so as we walk through that out, and I will tell you, we have truly wrestled with this. The amount of conversation that we have had is kind of exhausting in the midst of this. And what we've just decided is that it seems like our season in the Vineyard church has come to a close. And so I've met with our Vineyard leaders. I actually met with them this week and let them know of the change. And they were well aware that we've been wrestling with this. We've had lots of conversations over the last year about all of this stuff, so it wasn't a big surprise. So what's going to be happening over the next few months, you're going to start seeing some changes. And we're going to be changing our signage, pulling Vineyard out of our name, and going to be just Cornerstone Church. And our website will be changing, and the website is now going to be, it's actually active already, yourcornerstone.church. So you'll see all that stuff happening. We'll be changing print media and various other things throughout the year. We have a lot of work ahead of us, but we are actually excited for what's to come. We didn't want to just leave something. We wanted to go towards something. And so we are excited because over the summer and the fall so far, we have actually connected with a smaller Midwestern-based church network. It's about 50 churches or so, and it'll come up on the screen too, called Link. And that's actually Linked International Network of Churches. It's based out of Granville, Michigan. And Lee and I went to a lead pastor and wives retreat this summer up in Traverse City, and it was awesome. I actually just took a couple of the staff last week to their conference in Granville, Michigan, and it was also really awesome, really equipping. And so what we truly feel like, as we've explored this, if we've gone to some of their events, those things, we actually indeed feel that we will get what we need and what we desire in our connectedness and pastoral care and support and resources. We really feel like I came with, like when you go to a conference and you want to, like you're overwhelmed with ideas. I came back overwhelmed with ideas, and I haven't had that feeling in quite some time. So that was exciting for us. So that's the first thing, is that we're going towards something, right? Connecting with some other pastors in another network. But the other part of it, which is super exciting to me pastorally as well, I mentioned that the Vineyard, we actually give 3% of our income to them for the year. This network actually only requires a 1% of our annual budget to be going towards them. So we're like, we're saving money. And the board's like, no, we're not. Because what we did is we took that extra 2% and we shifted that into missions. And so now we get to actually have a really direct impact around the world, which is super exciting to me pastorally, that we get to have more of a direct impact. By the way, if you don't know, there was a hurricane that just happened, right? And when we were in Honduras, there was a church that we were in that was literally, Gary posted this last week, that was underwater. right? And so I'm excited to be able to have funds to be able to do things, and it's just exciting for us to do that. So that's crazy cool. Now I need to move on. I've talked about this too much. I need to jump into the teaching today, but I want to tell you one last thing, and I wanted to make sure to take the time to do this in this service. I want you to know that this transition doesn't change who we are. Right? Cornerstone's going to continue to be Cornerstone. You're going to have the crazy bald pastor. That ain't changing, okay? Nothing in that regard is changing. We're just changing essentially who the staff and myself as pastor get the privilege of being connected with and growing with, and who we get to be cared for by. And honestly, you probably won't notice a difference, is likely what's going to happen. You probably won't notice a difference, but I hope you actually do in this regard. I hope you notice that the staff is healthier. That's what I hope. That's the plan. All right? And hopefully we'll be able to serve you even better. And so there's that. All right? I know that's like a bomb, and you're like, now you're probably not going to be able to focus on anything else I'm going to say today. All right? But we're going to try to do that. But I will tell you this. If you have any questions about any of this, any concerns, I'm going to ask you to please come talk to me, set up a time to meet with me, talk to any of the staff. Also, we'll throw the pictures of the board up. This is our board, by the way. John Morningstar is our board president. Colin Stanger is our treasurer. And, of course, Leah's on the board. Betsy's on the board. And you can talk to any of these people. And myself, we're the ones that have been wrestling with this. We can answer any questions for you of why we got to where we are and all those kinds of things if you have more questions about that. All right? So, tough transition now, which is why I sat on the stool so I could get up. All right? All right, so we're going to jump into the teaching for the morning. But I would just reiterate, really, if you have questions about that, those kind of things, we know it's a big deal, okay? And so we would love to talk to you about that stuff, all right? So we're going to jump into the teaching for the day. If you want to grab a Bible, you can turn to 2 Timothy chapter 4. That's where we're going to land today, 2 Timothy chapter 4. If you don't have a paper Bible, there are paper Bibles spread throughout the auditorium. You can grab one of those if you'd like to. Or you can go to sermons.church on a browser on your device and search for Cornerstone Vineyard Church, and then all that will come up for you there as well, all right? And to get us started today, I want to begin by talking about my daughter, Eden. You can bring up Eden's picture. So this is my daughter, Eden. Many of you know Eden. She is amazing. And I'm going to talk about Eden today and I have permission to talk about her. She was like, you got to make sure you get permission to talk about her. But I'm talking about Eden today because some of you know that like over the last few months, I've been talking a lot about my son, Elijah. And somebody even verbally said out loud in one service a couple weeks ago, like, Matt, you have other children, right? And so I'm going to talk about Eden today to get us started. And like I said, I love Eden. Eden is incredible. Her personality is very similar to mine. Basically, I would call Eden is kind of spunky, if I can say it that way. My mom says that, there are certain of her grandchildren will pay back for my childhood, right? No, Eden's actually incredible, those kind of things. But I will say this about Eden, even though she is very spunky, for Eden, she can often respond to a challenge in life or circumstances that gets challenging in a specific way. When a challenge comes for Eden, and she knows this about herself, or we're working on that together, Lee and I with her, those kind of things. But when a challenge comes Eden's way, she can have a tendency to quit. When something gets a little tough, she's like, all right, this is too hard, I'm done. Like when we were in 2020, we were doing online schooling, man, God bless my wife. That was tough because Eden was getting frustrated. She wasn't getting taught, and so it was really hard, and so she just would give up. And so she can really sometimes just really easily get into this kind of mode of thinking. And so we're working on with Eden, trying to not get there so quickly. Like give it some effort. Like, give it a go a little bit. And case in point, she, like her brother and sister, are running cross-country, which, again, I've said this before, folks. I have no idea how I have 3 runners in my life because I don't believe in running. I think it's evil, right? So thank you. Appreciate that. Right? And so, like, she's just running. So she's doing cross-country. And, folks, cross-country is a tough sport. It is so tough. We were at a cross-country meet yesterday, and these kids, like I saw some girl vomiting afterwards. I mean, it's a tough sport, and so I'm proud of Eden for just being willing to go and run cross-country in the first place. But the first couple of weeks of the season, Eden was struggling because it's a tough sport, and when it got hard and she wasn't able to perform as well as she was wanting to perform, then there was this temptation for her to either slow down and walk, quit running altogether, or she would just not really give a lot of effort going through the finish line. And so as I've been going to these cross-country meets with Eden, and we start, and of course, we're at the start line, and I yell at her a little bit, and I'm that crazy dad that runs from point to point, right? Some of the other parents are just good being at the start and finish line. I'm the guy that runs to every place, right? And so when I run to the certain point and I see Eden, I will encourage her, like, all right, babe, you got this. Keep going. Keep digging in. But then I will say this exact thing to her, and it's really funny. When I read my notes to her and what I was going to share about her, she actually verbatim told me what I say, all right? And this is what I say to her. I'll say, all right, babe, come on, you got this. Keep digging in. And I'll say this: do not give yourself an excuse to quit. Because she knows that if it gets hard and it's hot outside and it's tough and she's behind these girls, right, she's going to give herself, it's easy for her to give herself an excuse to quit. And I say, babe, don't give yourself an excuse to quit. And I try to remind her in that moment that she can do more than she thinks that she can do sometimes. She has it in her. She has more than that she can than she thinks she does. And by the way, just this week, she actually set her personal record this week. Yeah. Which is really awesome, right? And so I'm so proud of what Eden has done this season. And by the way, if she would not have done what we're going to talk about today, right, which is this, is that she has begun to not focus on why she should give up, but she's going to focus on why she should finish. Because if she focuses on why she should give up, guess what? How many of you know that's going to fail? But if she can focus on why we need to finish, why she needs to finish, then she can be successful, which she has been doing. Which is why I start with that this morning, because there's value in learning what I think Eden has been learning and has learned this season, that there's value to focusing on why we should finish and not why we should give up. We should finish things. There's value to it. Take a look at a couple scriptures. Acts 20:24 says, however, I consider myself worth nothing to me, and then it lives, my only aim is to what? Say it with me. Finish. My only aim is to finish, right? Finish the race and complete the task the Lord Jesus has given me. 2 Corinthians 8:10-11. This is the New Living Translation. It says, here is my advice. This is such a cool scripture. Here's my advice. It would be good for you to finish. Be good for you to finish what you started a year ago. Last year, you were the first who wanted to give, and you were the first to begin doing it. Now you should finish what you started. See, there's value in finishing well, right? Finishing what God has called us to. There's value in finishing, not focusing on why we should give up. I actually made a list of things. For example, we should finish the conversation, finish the argument that we had with our spouse or with our boss or with one of our kids. We should finish that argument, because how many of you know that God's called us to be peacemakers? Oh, but we're living in a world with not a whole lot of peacemakers. We should finish the argument, finish the conversation, right? We should finish parenting our kids well. God has entrusted us with them, right? We should finish our counseling sessions, because God wants to see you healthy. Don't give up on your counseling. Finish it. I'm going to get a little passionate this morning. So we should finish, stay married, finish your life together. It's a covenant that you made not only with each other, but with God in the center of it. I'm doing a wedding this afternoon. Right, folks? Stay married. Finish well. Stay married. Sorry, I yelled at you. You see, there's value to this whole finishing thing, and specifically finishing what God has called us to do. It is so easy in our lives, folks, to quit. It is so easy to quit. And honestly, when I say it's easy to quit, it's actually the easy way of life is to quit. And really, to stick with it, that is the rewarding way of life, which is what we're going to talk about today. You want the easy way? Guess what? You can quit, and you will find things really challenging in life. But if you want the rewarding life, you want to actually have life abundantly that God has for us, guess what? You're going to have to stick it out. Right? We all know that, right? The best things in our life are the ones that we have to struggle for. So finish it. And it can be hard, but it can be so rewarding. And I go back to Eden. I think about how rewarding. You know how excited Eden was to have her PR this week? She was so excited. Which is why we're talking about there's value to this whole thing. We're going to discuss this today, some specific ways to do it and do it better and more, all right? So I want you to hold that thought. We have been in a message series here at Cornerstone called Pre-Decided, Better Choices for a Better Life, in which what we're talking about in this series is the value of pre-deciding on certain decisions in our life, so that when we're in the scenarios and circumstances that we have to make those decisions, we've already pre-decided what we're going to do, so we don't actually mess up, and we can actually do the right thing that we really want to do and that God wants us to do, because we've already pre-decided what decisions we are going to make. And so we've been in this series talking about being pre-decided to be ready to face temptation. We're talking, I am ready, right? We're ready against temptation. We've talked about being consistent and setting non-negotiable rhythms in our lives. And last week we talked about being pre-decided to be generous because generous people plan to be generous. And so generous with our time and our resources and all of that. And today we're going to talk about pre-deciding. We're going to finish the series today about the value of finishing. We're going to talk about I'm a finisher today. Finishing what God has called us to and be a true finisher, not give up on what God has in front of us. So our topic and title this morning is Finisher When You Want to Give Up. Be a finisher even when we want to give up. And I want to give us a framework for some keys to live this out. And to do that, we're going to look at 2 Timothy chapter 4. Just a little bit of background about this text. This was written by the Apostle Paul to his spiritual son, Timothy. And essentially, both 1 Timothy and 2 Timothy are really Paul describing to Timothy like how to live life and how to flesh this out and actually how to live this all out in life. And in context today, he's going to tell Timothy how to be a finisher, finish what God has called him to be and to do and why. And so I think it's valuable for us this morning. All right, so we're going to start in verse 5. It says this, 2 Timothy 4:5 says, "But you keep your head in all situations. Endure hardship. Do the work of an evangelist. Discharge all the duties of your ministry. For I am already being poured out like a drink offering, and the time of my departure is near. I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. Now there is in store for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award to me on that day. And not only me, but also to all who have longed for his appearing." And so in those verses, I see a couple keys to effectively being a finisher. Mostly it's actually from one verse. In particular, it's actually verse 5, and we'll pick that apart today. But I see ways to pre-decide to not give up, to finish more, finish well. All right? But before I give those points to you and where I flesh this all out, I want to pray. So if you would pray with me, and then I'll give you those things to write down and think about. So let's pray. God, we come to you this morning in prayer in the midst of this teaching because we don't want to miss what you have for us. So God, we pray. I know, God, that there are people here that had a great week and there are people that here had a tough week and then probably some people that just had an okay week. But God, we come in this morning, we could easily be distracted by what our week was. And so I pray, God, that you would take those distractions away from us this morning and ultimately that you would teach us something, grow us up by the power of your Spirit as we look into this text, specifically this verse 5, in 2 Timothy, and we would be in a position where we would be able to do this better, be a better finisher in what you have in front of us, not give up, and experience what Eden has experienced this cross-country season. We'd have victories in our life because of it. I pray, God, if I stand here and talk for a while and you don't show up and do something, I think it's going to probably be a huge waste of time, but gosh, if you show up and do something, man, this would be well worth it, and change our lives, change the people's lives that we're involved in relationally, those kinds of things. So just give this time to you. Pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. All right, we have 2 points today. You can fill the first one in. Is this, be a finisher by pre-deciding to, number one is be level-headed. Be level-headed. All right, we'll get into the depths of that in just a minute. And I mentioned that I see in our text today a few keys to effectively being a finisher, and really from one verse 5, which is where I want to go. But before I do that, I think it's important to, that's going to kind of flesh out the how to do this, but I want to first look at the why real quick. The why is in this text of why I picked this text and those kind of things. And so the why is in verses 7 and 8 later in our text. It says this, again, I fought the good fight. I have finished, and I underline that. I finished the race. I've kept the faith. Now there is in store for me the crown of righteousness. So this is why we are using this text today as we talk about I am a finisher, to be a finisher, right? Because this describes the idea of finishing and staying in step with what God's plans are. And the reward, when we finish things, we stay in step with what God's plans are. The reward is a crown of righteousness. I don't know about you. That sounds pretty good to me. And so there's value to finishing, a good reason to try to pre-decide to be a better finisher so that we can get this crown of righteousness. And so that's the why. And so now let's flesh out the how, though, right? The how is found, in verse 5, which gives us our points today. Verse 5 says, but you, meaning you and me, not just Timothy, but you keep your head in all situations, endure hardship, do the work of an evangelist, discharge all the duties of your ministry. And for this first point, I want to focus on the very first part of that says, but you keep your head in all situations. How many of you know you don't do that very well? Just me? Okay, all right, somebody else can pray, right? How many, look, folks, if you want to be a finisher, we want to be a finisher, right? We have to pre-decide that we're not going to lose it when we're frustrated. We're not going to lose it when we're angry. We're not going to lose it when we're emotional, right? Because we're going to finish. We're going to be a good finisher, right? How many of you know that we don't tend to make really good decisions when we're frustrated, angry, and emotional? If you do, you can come teach, right? No, what happens is when we are frustrated, angry, and emotional, we often quit too fast, don't we? We can become really drawn into all of that, and we give up when we're in that state of mind. We miss what God might be having us go through in that moment. And so, for example, I've made a list of things. So when we're angry and we're frustrated and we're emotional, sometimes what happens is that we leave things in relational shambles. Right? So we said some things that shouldn't have been said, or we left some things unsaid that probably should be said. Or we only give that project at work or school half-hearted effort, and we end up having to redo it anyway. We stop going to counseling, or we stop going to Celebrate Recovery because it's getting too real. Right? And some of our wounds are starting to be exposed. And so because, by the way, when we have wounds, they hurt. And so because those wounds are starting to be exposed in our counseling, it's starting to shut us down because we figure, you know what, I just want to keep this covered up. How many of you know if we keep our wounds covered up, folks, those wounds are going to fester? Or we give up trying to understand our teenager. Or teenagers start to give up trying to understand your parents, just settling for the fact, right, that teenagers and parents just hate each other. Can I tell you, though, that's not always the case. Or we give up on our marriage because it just doesn't, quote unquote, feel like it used to once we were dating or the first year of our marriage, and we give up on our marriage. And I want to tell you today, folks, don't quit. Don't quit. Keep your head in all situations. Don't make a decision when you're frustrated or you're emotional, and I'm speaking to me, Matt, okay? We need to not make these decisions, right, when we are frustrated or we're angry or emotional. We need to be level-headed so that we can finish well. Like I tell Eden, folks, we need to not give ourselves an excuse to quit. Can I tell you that I think that so many times in our lives, folks, we give ourselves an excuse to quit, and then we anchor in on that excuse. Don't give yourself an excuse to quit. Yes, your teenager can be a jerk sometimes. I love you, Elijah. I love you. No, Elijah's a great kid. But again, their brains are not fully developed. Okay? They're learning. So yes, they can be kind of in a challenging mood sometimes. Don't give up on them. Teenagers, don't give up on your parents. By the way, they've lived a lot of life. They know some stuff, right? Sorry, Elijah, I love you, man. You see, I think sometimes we just give ourselves an excuse to quit, and we anchor in on that excuse just because we're frustrated, we're emotional, or we're angry. And what I want to suggest today, folks, is that instead we need to plan. We need to plan. Pre-decide on some measures in order to truly keep our head in all situations. We need to plan. Now, I know when I say that, what may come to your mind is something like this. Take a look at this video. This might be what comes to your mind.
If you want the leg room, say you want the leg room. Don't blame the mechanism.
All right, Dad, we're 5 blocks from the house. Sit sideways.
Like an animal. Because of her, I have to sit here like an animal. Serenity now! Serenity now!
What is that?
Doctor gave me a relaxation cassette. When my blood pressure gets too high, the man on the tape tells me to say, Serenity now!
Are you supposed to yell it?
The man on the tape wasn't specific.
All right. Now, I know some of you know that clip, right? The serenity now, right? That's what came. I know that might come to your mind when I talk about this idea of planning and to truly keep our head in all situations. But if you know that episode, the serenity now thing didn't work, right? It didn't work. And so what I'm talking about is something that I think you've probably heard before. I think actually from this stage it's been taught before. But it's the concept of HALT. I'll bring that up. But you guys, I think you know this, right? This is when you're hungry, angry, lonely and tired, right? Hungry, angry, lonely, and tired, right? Folks, when we are hungry, angry, lonely, and tired, we need to know that we are, and we need to halt. Not scream serenity now, right? We need to halt. And so I made a list of things like we need to decide in those moments when we're hungry, angry, lonely, and tired that we are going to pause the conversation when needed. And notice that I said pause there, okay? Oftentimes the conversation needs to come back around, but we may need to pause in that moment. We may need to halt. Or we take a walk and we clear our head and we reset ourselves and we can come back and have a conversation. Or we can have a reset in regards to giving more energy to the project so we can give that full steam. Or I actually thought about this week. We halt all other things so that we can, this would be really good for some of you. We halt all other things in your life other than going to work and like some of your actual responsibilities you can't get rid of, right? Like maybe being a parent, those kind of things. You halt all other things so that you can actually go to your counseling. You halt other things so that you can come and you can attend Celebrate Recovery on Monday nights. You halt everything else. You can focus on your recovery. Or we decide, and I think this is a really good one, and gosh, I want to do this one better, is that when we decide that no decision is going to be made when we're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. How many of you know if we decided nothing when we were hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, we'd probably be in a better place? Right? So maybe we need to pre-decide that we're going to halt and no decision is going to be made when we're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. And I think that would actually benefit our lives and benefit the lives of those people around us. By the way, I'm seeing people look at each other and smile during that one. I think essentially that, and gosh, I don't do that one enough. I need to do that. I think we can do that, right? Like if we can pause and say no decision's going to be made, we would be much more level-headed. You and I would be much more level-headed. And I know that I'm making it sound like way simple, and by the way, it's not simple, okay? If it was simple, we'd all do it, right? It's super hard. But if we can pre-decide that we will do these things, right, we can halt and some of those examples, right, I focus on making the plan, keeping our head, I think we would keep our head in more and more and more situations. We would be a better finisher. We would. But if you're like me, I just don't focus on that pre-decision enough, and I just kind of go throughout my day and then explode on people and all that kind of stuff, right? And then I was thinking this week, I've been actually learning a little bit, some podcasts that I've been listening to. I've been learning about the human brain. And the human brain is incredible. And so what I've been learning about these scientists have realized and know that the brain, some of you know this, right, is a muscle. And so, of course, that it can learn stuff, which we know that, right, because we go to school and all the kinds of, the brain can learn stuff. But more specifically is that the brain can actually, because it is a muscle, it can actually create new neural pathways. Because, like, it's like flexing your arm muscle, which I need to do more. But like, flexing your arm muscle, right, that muscle's going to get stronger, and the same thing happens with your brain. And what can happen is when we start to go after something, we can create a new neural pathway in our brain. And what happens is we do something over and over, like lifting and try to strengthen this muscle. The brain can then create a new way of doing things. And if we can be consistent, like we talked about a few weeks ago, we can keep doing it, it becomes the norm. And a new neural pathway is made, and it then becomes our default. So I want you to know that some of you in the room, you might need to hear this today. What you have been doesn't mean it's what you have to be. You, with God's help, I'm going to talk about this in a minute, can actually create a new neural pathway in your life and be a finisher. I was actually thinking that this concept of the brain thing, I was thinking it's why, and this happens to you, I'm sure, right? Like, I drive most often in my car to this place, to the church, because it's where I work. I come there every day. I come here multiple times a day, sometimes. And so when I leave my neighborhood, if I am not conscious about which way I have to turn when I'm not coming to church, you know what I do? I automatically start driving towards church, right? This happens to us, right? And so we understand this stuff, but what happens is that because it becomes so consistent in what we do, right? It becomes the new neural pathway. Folks, the same is true. So that sometimes we don't think about that stuff, but when we want to change something, man, the drive to church thing can actually be the whole I'm not going to blow up at somebody thing. It can. We can pre-decide to create a new neural pathway so that we can be a better finisher. I mean, I don't know about you, but I would love to not blow up as often as I do. I would love a new neural, sign me up. I'm in for the whole let's make a new neural pathway thing. Like, I'm in it. Because I'm way better than I used to be. But man, like this week, I had to call Comcast. So you don't know, right? And the guy was from New York, and he gave me the New York attitude. And at one point, I was like, I'm going to try to really be nice to you. I said that actually out loud to him, you know? And so I'm way better than I used to be, but man, I still have work to do. I need to create this new, and here's the thing. By the way, if I'm only doing it in my effort, there's likely I'm going to fail. But this is what I love this part. In Philippians 1:6 says, being confident of this, that he who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion until the day of Christ Jesus. Because what I love about this is that we can put some effort in, and since God is with us, right, always with us, and if we work on this healthy new neural pathway thing, God will show up. God will do something. Because by the way, he's all for us not blowing up all the time. Right? He will continue this good work, and he will show up, and he will help us become a healthier finisher. And I don't know about you, but I'm all in for that. In 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 8, this is in the Message version of the scripture. It says this. It says, keep a cool head. Stay alert. The devil is poised to pounce and would like nothing better than to catch you napping. This, folks, this keeping a cool head thing, this matters. It's so being level-headed, it matters to be a good finisher. And if we don't take it seriously, what I love, can you bring that scripture up one more time? What I love about this verse, that's why I chose the Message version of it, is that like if we don't pay enough attention to this level-headedness stuff, right? The reality is that the devil will catch us napping, and he will pounce on us. How many of you know? Even in that moment when I was on the phone with Comcast, I felt like something rising up in me, and I was like, the Holy Spirit's like, it's okay. Serenity now, right? And so I appreciated the Holy Spirit in that moment because I started to kind of lose it, and the Holy Spirit kind of pulled me back in, right? Because the enemy was ready to pounce on me. I think if we can focus on this and we can pre-plan and we can not make decisions or focus on the fact that being level-headed, folks, I think if we can really focus on that, we can make a neural pathway, and life will become less messy and less messy rather than messier and messier. And I know I need that. I'm sure there's probably some of you who do as well. So that's our first thing. Be a finisher by pre-deciding to be level-headed. Second thing, you can fill this in. Be a finisher by pre-deciding to always leave it all out there. Fill that in. Always leave it all out there. This comes from the section of verse 5 of the text that says this. It says, but you keep your head in all situations, endure hardship. Do the work of an evangelist. Discharge all the duties of your ministry. And this is what I would call living life at 100%, right? Doing what it says there and discharging all the duties of your ministry, all that God has called you to do. Give it your all. Leave it all out there. Maybe another way to say it would be like, leave it all on the field. Put it all on the mat, right? Give it your blood, sweat, and tears. Live life at 100%. Deciding and pre-deciding that you're all in, whatever's in front of you, whatever's in front of me. There's nothing left to do. There's nothing left to say. There's no energy that we didn't expel. Right? Resource that we didn't utilize that we could have. At the end of the day, like, man, we're just, man, I gave it everything. It says discharge all. Discharge all the duties of your ministry. Not just a little bit, but all of it. Give it your all every day. Be all in. And as a result, if we can do that, right? Look again at verse 7 and 8, right? If we look at verse 7 and 8, if we do all that, it says we'll have an ability to fight the good fight, finish the race, and a crown of good stuff and righteousness will come our way. We have to leave it all out there. And by the way, we even have to leave it all. I think sometimes it's easy to leave it all out there when life is good, but folks, we have to leave it all out there when life really stinks. How many of you have ever heard of the 90-10 rule? Anybody ever heard of the 90-10 rule? Anybody? Okay, a couple of you. If you don't know, the 90-10 rule is the concept that the first 90% of anything or something is completed in about 10% of the time. But, excuse me, but the last 10% is the most agonizing, right? And will take 90% of the time. Let me say that again. The first 90% of something is completed in 10% of the time, but the last 10% is the most agonizing and will take 90% of the time, right? How many of you have actually found that to be true? It is, isn't it? That last like that last 10% of anything finishing can be so hard, right? But even in that, I think the idea that we get from Paul in this text is even in the final 10%, leave it all out there. Be committed, pre-decided that no matter what, you are going to leave it all on the field. Not going to leave anything to chance. Look, the truth is this, and again, we know this, right? I'm not giving you like anything that we don't know already, but folks, if we go into life with a level of tenacity, often we can get it done. But if we go in with a bad attitude or half-hearted, right, we also know what the result of that is, don't we? It's often failure, right? We go into tenacity, we could very well get it all done. If we go in half-hearted, we're going to end up in quit land. Oftentimes. There's something to this leave it all out there mentality to finish well, to be a finisher. I was actually thinking this week about our guest speaker last week. If you were here last week, we had a guest speaker. His name was Lewis Boyden. He was from the Relevant Church up in Niles, and he did an incredible job. But there were, in both services, he used this phrase. It'll come up on the screen. He said, I bled all over this message. I don't know if you remember him saying that, but it caught my attention when he said that. He said, I bled all over this message. And I think when he shared that last week, what he was kind of in context was referencing is that ultimately what he was preaching last weekend was also for him. Like it cut him deep a little bit too. Right? He needed to kind of walk through some of that stuff too. But as I was reconsidering that comment this week, it was kind of replaying in my head. I was thinking about the fact that when I looked at it in context of our time this morning as well, is that I think it was also because ultimately for him, I think he was telling us that he gave it his all. He put 100%. Like he left it on the stage last week, y'all. He left it on here. And so, by the way, because he expelled all the duties of his ministry, what he was doing here last weekend, I think it helped us a ton. Right? It's changed lives. And so there's something to this 100% living kind of thing. Now, some of you know that like Matt's all in kind of guy. That's who I am. But I will tell you, I even can lean towards certain parts of my life where I'm not 100% all in. But I think we hear this is the way to live life, even in the midst of difficulty, right? The truth of it is that we might have to stomach some difficulty. Again, it says in verse 5, it says, but you keep your head in all situations. And it says this, endure hardship. Endure hardship. Look, folks, and again, you know this is true. Life is hard. Relationships are hard. Following Jesus is hard. Work is hard. And so what we need to do is we need to pre-decide, come to the grips with the fact that stuff is just hard, but no matter what hard stuff we're going to get, we're going to live 100%. I think sometimes we dream and we go, oh, wouldn't it be nice if we were just on a beach with a pina colada, you know? How many of you know that's vacation and it only happens a couple times a year? Right? Right? The reality is that our life generally 99.9% of the time is going to be hard. Why do we always look towards the easy stuff? We need to realize this stuff. We need to pre-decide it's going to be hard, but we're going to live 100% no matter what. Am I preaching to somebody today? Come on now. We got to leave it all out there. Do all in our power to be a finisher. It says in James chapter 1, verse 4, it says, let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. See, we've got to let perseverance finish. Leave it all out there no matter what. It will be of benefit to us, it says, so that we will not be lacking anything. But we've got to pre-decide that decision is made, that we're going to live 100%. Because guess what, folks, it's hard to muster up 100% living in the moment. You know that. And so we have to pre-decide that we are going to leave it all out there at work. We're going to leave it all out there in our marriage. We're going to leave it all out there as a dad, as a mom, as a small group leader, with our finances, with our physical health. We're going to leave it all out there with our spiritual lives, which is the most important thing anyway. We're going to leave it all out there. And really, I want to say this, folks, and you know this, like the reality is that even our spiritual life, leaving it all out there, that actually is the most important thing. And it actually says we got to get that figured out first and foremost, right? It says in Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 5, it says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. I love that verse because it says all. It means all in, 100% living, right? Live all this. If we do that, not just parts of it, not just here or there, not just coming to church every now and then, but with all your heart and all your soul and all your strength, we need to pre-decide that we're all in. Tyler's going to come. We're going to get ready to close here. Let me kind of close this down a little bit, folks. I think that we need to decide that we're gonna spiritually first leave it all out there, but in all these other areas, in our work, in our relationships, in all these spiritually, emotionally, relationally, physically, financially, we're just gonna leave it all out there. Leave it on the mat, put our blood, sweat, and tears in it. Finish and finish well. Be a continual finisher in every area of our life and pre-decide that there's nothing left to do. No, nothing left to say, no energy that we didn't expel, resource we didn't use, right? We're 100% in. It's what it takes to be a finisher. It's got to be 100% living. Though hard sometimes. I know what I'm talking about today. I make it sound real easy. I know it's hard. Though it's hard sometimes. To do all the things that God has called us to do, I think it's important to live towards working every ounce of energy we got towards that. Which leads me to a question, and we're going to close with this today. Here's the question. Is there an area of my life I am not all in? And I want you to really think about that today. Because I found in seasons of my life that there sometimes are, like even me, a guy who tends to be 100% live, I'm just kind of all in kind of guy. I can find different areas sometimes in my life where I'm not all the way in. And likely, if you can answer that there's a place in your life that you're not all the way in, it's probably not working out the way you want it to. Right? And that's my guess. You would actually probably desire it for a change. So I think it's worth considering. And if we can do that, if we can decide that and know what that is, and we can decide we're going to be all in, I think we'll be in a much better place to be a finisher in that place, in that situation, in that circumstance, in that relationship. So that's the second thing. Be a finisher by pre-deciding to always leave it all out there. So with that,